Okay, so I decided this morning that I would make life stressful. So, yeah. Um, hold on. Yeah, so let's talk about Christian values. Opening Pandora's box again. um, I have made it so in the settings that only members can comment in the chat, because I know from experience what seems to happen um, when we talk about these things. I'm I'm not so interested in arguing with people, not at all actually. I'm more interested in the historical context. Um, did Christianity or the introduction of Christianity make things better? In the places where Christianity was introduced, did it make things better or not? And this is something that is not that difficult to answer, because we can look back and with if we manage to remain objective, um, and it doesn't matter as long as you remain objective. It doesn't matter if you're a Christian or not. um, we should be able to look at what happened and answer that question: did Christianity make things better? We have lots of wonderful people joining here. KP Heathen, Roche Fox, GB, Angela, Stealth Mode, Sunny Days. Wonderful. And thank you all for being members to this channel. I think that if we go back to ancient Rome, the story that is still being taught in schools, I believe, is that the Christians were persecuted and they had to hide in the catacombs. Is that what they say in English? Well, the tunnels underground, and have secret meetings and so on. And certainly, I mean, the people in power did not like any that their power structure was challenged. But at some point, the emperor figured out that, well, hold on a second. If I throw out all the gods, and instead of that, I have this new arrangement where there is one god, and directly below that god is me, the emperor, approved by God. That gives the emperor a lot more power, doesn't it? It's a very top-down structure. And what happened after that is that now the persecution turned around, right? So not only was, I mean, if we go back to ancient Greek, they had a tradition for debate, they had a tradition for philosophy, and so on. But all of that changed at this point because disagreement was largely outlawed at that point. And that seems to have been, a thing with the places where Christianity became part of the power structure in society. Now disagreement could get you in trouble. If you disagreed with narrative, it could get you in trouble. And largely speaking, this and this is something that people may disagree with, but it seems to the introduction of Christianity, or no, to be more correct, the introduction with using Christianity as a power structure seems to have led Europe into the Dark Ages. And that lasted for like 1,000 years. So I think that's a different story, which is probably more true than the one that is taught in schools. Um, and I think it's worth noticing that there seems to be a pattern. Wherever there's a monotheistic uh, power structure in society, it's very top down, and disagreement can get you in trouble with the authorities. Now, if we move up north, and this is another thing, which seems to be, uh, I don't know. My guess is that in the USA, some places at least, people are taught this idea of a peaceful conversion to Christianity, which is false. And I haven't been able to track down where they teach this, but maybe it's like these churches say that. I don't know. But this is like, they need to stop saying that, because that's not true. It's very, very untrue. um, Christianity was forced upon people um, in Northern Europe. It's like, yeah, we shouldn't have to discuss that, because it's been proven. And yeah, but anyway, at some point, of course, people, when they were asked, "Are you a Christian?" they would just say yes, because if they didn't say yes, they knew that that would get them in trouble. So it's like, we know that Christianity did not make things better for people during the introduction of Christianity. And one argument I've seen is that, well, with Christianity, the idea that every human being has a value was introduced. And before that, that was not a thing. That was not a concept even. That can't be true, because slavery existed. I mean, Christianity didn't change anything concerning slavery. And now some people will say that, well, it was because they had this idea that people from Africa, for instance, they didn't look exactly like us Europeans, so therefore they said that, oh, they're not really human, and certainly you can find that kind of disgusting um, narrative if we look back in history. But slavery existed long before that, obviously, and it was not race specific at all. So, and Christianity didn't change any of that. It seems to have in northern parts, especially Scandinavia, it seems to have changed the value of like the human value, of women, so that with Christianity came the idea that women are less worth than men. And certainly we can see that women lost quite a few rights with the introduction of Christianity in Scandinavia. So I think Did it make things better? Um, it would be interesting to see if there are places, countries where Christianity was never introduced, and to see if how did they do, and we can look at other places on the globe and ask that question. And certainly, um, it seems like many of those countries, they are absolutely civilized, and they have you know a very high degree of freedoms, civil rights, and so on. So it seems like Christianity is not a necessity, at least, uh, to make a civilization civilized. And you know, now a couple of things here. We're not talking about what is Christianity, and I see that there's a few comments here now. Christianity is about this and that, and that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about. We're not talking about. And I mean, if you speak to a priest here in Norway now, it will be a nice person, and they will have totally wonderful, um, uh, wonderful and kind approach to life and other fellow beings and all of that. We're not talking about that. We're talking about Christianity as a concept. It was very different back then. I mean, it was very different. So we're not talking about how we understand Christianity now. We're talking about back in history. What was Christianity like back then? It was very different, and did it make life better for people? And I think it's yes. You can't really say yes or no, because it's very complex. It's very complex. So yeah, but my inspiration for this little sharing of thoughts here is an article or an opinion piece that was written by the leader of the youth division of a political party in Norway a couple of days ago, and the directly translated, that party is called Kristelig Folkeparti. That means Christian People's Party. Sounds communist, actually, but it's not. And he wrote that, and it was provoking to me, but I'm not getting into. I'm not writing a response. Other people will do that. They have done that already, but I'm not getting into public arguments like that. But it's like he wrote. I didn't read the whole thing because there is nothing new in these when these people open their mouth. But he wrote one thing there, that with Christianity we became I can't remember the words exactly, but we became much more humane and kind, and we said farewell to values that today we would not want to be associated with. And I was like, what the hell? He's talking about the introduction the introduction of Christianity in Norway, which was done by the sword. I mean, it's incredible, and that's like, come on, what a fucking idiot! Oh, excuse me, excuse my language, excuse my language, but you can pick that apart, because when Christianity was introduced and forced upon people in Norway, it was very brutal. it was very brutal, and laws were introduced that were tyrannical. The king had a gang of villains, basically horrible people. They were called the guests. That's the second Olav, and they would travel around and see check on people, if they were practicing the old customs or not, and if they were not behaving like good Christians, they would torture them. Um, and yes, people will be writing in the comments they were not really Christians. Well, again, we're not talking about what a good Christian is. We're talking about the introduction of Christianity. So it's like, and also people will say, "Oh, things were different back then." Well, you know what? It was people were still humans. So, yeah, um, and it was cruel and it was tyrannical, and I think what seems to be a common theme in Christianity is how the mistreatment of women. I mean, it's I mean, even in the deepest, most ignorant parts of certain countries, um, they must have heard about witch burnings, right? So, what do you think they did to all these women who were, Volver and those who uh, treated people for diseases and sickness? What do you think they did to them? Hmm. So, uh, thank you, Angela. Thank you. Um, Yasmin, thank you for the donation. Yeah, Christianity stole ideas from Neoplatonism. Neoplatonism is European wisdom. Um, yeah, Christianity did not exist in a vacuum. It's easy to see where they have borrowed their ideas and so on. And it's evolved, the understanding of what Christian values are has changed over time, and it's different in different parts of the world today. But again, what do you think? Do you think it made life better for people or not? Um, yeah, Tron, the massacre in Verden in October 782. How was it? He first had them baptized and then beheaded, I think. Yeah. Um, okay. Yeah, horror. Yeah, KP Eden says that the Christian church was the main reason for war, not to mention the Vatican backed Germany during World War II. I think Charlemagne, how do you say it in English? Karl the Great, um, certainly shaped Europe. Um, when it comes to the Catholic Church, which basically was Christianity for most of human history, that was the same as Christianity. It it must be seen as almost like the mafia. Um, and it would wage wars, and it would, well, I mean, the Crusades, it would grab property. And they had this arrangement, of course, they would scare people with hell, and you could pay your way out of hell or reduce your time in the fiery lake, the burning lake, by paying money to the Catholic Church and by giving them your properties and so on. And many people did. So the Catholic Church became immensely rich. Um, and and I think a lot of people, especially in the USA, they don't even view Catholicism as Christianity. I've seen that in the comments. And Christianity seems to branch out. There are many different forms of Christianity, many different forms. So that I think that doesn't really concern our discussion here. I think that, again, did Christianity make things better? There's an argument that I think is a good argument, that Christianity made things better for people because it became less Christian. And I know that sounds strange. What is meant by that is that the original Christianity that is true to the texts is not forgiving. It's not kind. It's very brutal. But humanism, which has roots back to ancient Greece, influenced, and also the era of enlightenment and all of that. It influenced Christianity and how it's practiced. So Christianity today is very different, and it's different not because of Christianity, it's different because of the influences from outside of Christianity. And I think that's a good argument. And if you read the Bible, and I've read more of the Bible than most Christians, that came as a shock to me, actually, but that seems to be the case. And yeah. So again, I think another question here is, what is Christianity? And that's I can't answer that. But I can say I can look at Christianity when it was introduced, what happened to the people, and it did not make things better for people. At least in Northern Europe, it did not make things better. It was used as a tool to concentrate power under a king's rule. Basically, that's what Christianity was back then. So, yeah, Trond says it obviously didn't make things better for those poor, quote unquote, witches who was burned at the stake. Yeah. I think a problem that I have with Christianity and not all Christianity, but a lot of the people who subscribe to some dogma that can be Christians, Muslims, communists, MAGA people, what have you, they seem to have all the answers. And I feel that that's a bit scary because I'm like, I have so few answers and I have many questions. And the more I think about things and the more I read and the more I look into things, the more questions I get. It's like, you see where I'm getting with this? It's like it shouldn't people shouldn't have that many answers just ready made for them. It's not healthy. It's like I receive letters now and then from people who want me to become a Christian, and in many of these letters, they say, "Oh, read the Bible; all the answers are there." And first of all, it's a little bit condescending to assume that I haven't read the Bible. No, I haven't read the whole Bible. That's true. Um, uh, but no, it doesn't have all the answers. Of course, it doesn't. Um, it's but these people they have it's lazy intellectualism, or it's the opposite of intellectualism. And there is no wonder, it's not a big mystery why Christianity has been an enemy of intellectualism up through history. It's interesting that we have for some time now in the USA, we have seen an attack on higher education. And I see it here. It's like in the comments and so on, the times I've talked about that. Oh, colleges are just woke, and people will write these things and probably, no, this is members only, so it's okay. But um, there's this contempt for people who choose higher education, and there's a contempt for knowledge, science. Um, and that seems to be quite common when this dogmatic form of Christianity is taking over. Um, so it's the same actually in it. In there's a joke. Let's see if I can remember it. It's not funny, but maybe I won't remember it. But anyway, in China at least, Mao's little red handbook, people had to have that. And that was basically how to live and what to think. Um, so, yeah. So that's not good. Mm, yeah, stealth mode says we are concerned on the current situation. It's getting warm. Yeah. And just on a personal note there, what provokes me is the word God. That might seem strange to people. It provokes me when people say God. And my response, I try not to respond to these things, but it's like, which one? Which one? And why do you assume that it's the God of Christianity that is the God? I mean, how do you assume that? Why do you assume that? You shouldn't. God, well, are you talking about Odin? You know? And another thing that kind of provokes me actually is when Trump, who needed to cater to the Christians, of course, he's now cosplaying as a Christian, and he said, he's using the word religion. We will bring religion back to America. It will be bigger and better and all of that. And I'm like, okay, which one? Which religion? Are you talking about Hinduism? Are you talking about Islam? Are you talking about Buddhism? I don't know which one, because there are so many. And I think a government should stay the fuck out of all things religious, because yeah. But anyway, so let's see here. Yeah, GB, we have been through this before, and you make these statements, which is your right, but it's like you're making these statements as if it's the truth. But this is not, you can't know these things, and therefore I'm not responding to them because I know where that leads. So let's see here. Okay. Yeah. There's like a crown next to some of the. What does that mean? I don't know. Next to some of your names. I need to figure out what that is about. I suppose it's some new thing. Yeah, I think. The more you comment. Okay, I see. Oh, okay. No, you're not, GB, you're not offending anyone. It's just, let's leave it at that. People who are not Christian, they don't get easily offended because we're used to the whole thing, Yeah. Okay. So, I think this is, I mean, did Christianity make things better? I think it's difficult to answer. We know for sure that, at least in Northern Europe, it did not make things better for people when it was introduced. Would we have been better off without Christianity? If Christianity had never been introduced? We don't know. We do not know. We do not know. But I think I would answer yes if I had to answer. But also, I think the honest answer is that I don't know, because it would have changed so many things in history. You know, I think maybe we would have gotten further. So let's talk about Norway. A couple of things. If Christianity had never been introduced here, one thing is that the Black Plague wouldn't have had spread as far, and it wouldn't have been so devastating. For what I've heard is that it was spread by the monks, who would give the last rites, last oil, the ritual to the dead, and then move on to the next dying person and their family. And by doing so, they were spreading the plague. That's what we were taught in school, at least. So, and the Black Plague devastated Norway so much that it took centuries. I mean, Norway was a colony from the mid 1300s up until the 1900s, early 1900s, actually. And so that would have been different, maybe. Um, but again, it's so difficult to answer. I was going to say, would more people have been literate without Christianity? I don't know, because with Christianity, I mean, Christianity was spread to the people without the people ever. They never got to read or understand anything in the Bible because it was in Latin, and sermons, they were in Latin. So, and at least here, they people had to go to church on Sundays, and they would sit there and listen to things that they had no idea what they were saying. And if they fell asleep, they had, the church servant, he had this large, long stick, this pole, and he would poke people if he from the side, if he saw that they had fallen asleep. So yeah. Um, I don't know. I mean, Norway or Scandinavia was a somewhat literate society, literate, so people could read and write somewhat, um, before the introduction of Christianity. I mean, using runes. Um, but I don't know. I do not know. Is this an attack on Christianity? Not at all. This is not meant as an attack on Christianity. More like a discussion here, totally unprepared, just off the top of my head, and all of that about Christianity as it was when it was introduced centuries ago, in a very different setting, of course. Leslie, yes, the Catholic Church opposed some early scientific discoveries. Yes, absolutely. I will add that the monks in their monasteries, they did science. Let's put it this way: they actually did science, and they would treat people. I mean, so we must not forget about that. So it's not all black and white, as most things. Yeah, I've heard that. Yes, some black people they think some people think that black people should. You're writing here. Some people think that black people should deny Christianity because it was used against them in slavery. Yeah, absolutely. It was, and it's it's. I mean, when you think about it, and now we're talking about black slavery, like white people enslaving black people. It was justified because, and it's difficult for us to imagine, but sorry, it was justified because they were seen as not as human as white people. And it's horrible when we, I mean, it's truly horrible, obviously. But, um, I mean, there was like this. I can't remember when, but it was 1900s something in Oslo here in Norway. They had a display of and I'm sorry about the word here, but it was a Negro village, and people would pay, get a ticket to come and look at the Negro village on display. Um, I mean, it's not that many generations ago, and they would point at them and pay money to see it. So clearly, they were seen as not like us, but to put it that way. And yeah, it's hard to imagine, but it's an actual fact. And yeah, so and from what I understand, that display would traveled around in Europe, and they people would come and buy a ticket to come and see the Negro village on display. So this is one of the things that makes me say, oh yeah, well, not everything was better back in the old days, you know. Um, so um, yeah, okay. But anyway, I think this is an interesting discussion, and as with many interesting discussions, we will probably never find a concise answer. Um, yeah. Okay. Have a wonderful day, and we'll talk soon. Okay. Bye bye.